Okay, so I don't know whether to say greetings, brothers and sisters, because I don't know if this is going to be a standalone video or just the end of another video. I have a video that's up that's yellowed. In fact, let me go make that a members only. It's called Remembering the Big Lie. I'm trying a new internet service that has has high speeds but a low ping, phone internet. And whatever. But it caused me to have sort of a glitch out when I was uploading the video. So the video was greened on one tab, but it was yellowed on another. But when it was uploaded, it seemed to be green. And then I meant to check it before bed, and I didn't. I woke up and it was yellow, which kind of is a bummer. So having said that, I don't know if this video is going to be ahead of that or at least ahead of that. And that video has some response to comments to my video about Jesus and the Bible. I'm not sure what I called that video. Video was called, I don't know what it's called. Remembering, no, it called comment video about religion and Jesus. And so it had a number of comments which will feed into this video. This video is going to be more substantial because I'm going to go more in depth to my understanding of the story of Christ and religion and the Christian religion and all of it, with an understanding of this idea of a false promise of heaven. And so I got a long comment. I had to break it up into two. It was so long. And the person wrote this. Paul, I sent a comment to you before about the Catholic Church that retained standing after the disaster that took place in Lahaina. I don't remember that comment. I reached out to you because in the past you spoke about your mother praying the rosary and other Catholics. You made a comment that you considered this good. Well, just to clarify that, my mom used to have prayer meetings over my house when I was in, teenager, eighth grade and a teenager, and I might talk about that. I will talk about that later in this video if I remember. Hopefully, I'll remember. But my grandmother was Irish Catholic. She was an orphan, lived a tough life, and she used to pray the rosary for all the family members. And I believe my mom's prayers, I prayed the rosary a little bit. And these nuns' prayers and my grandmother's prayers helped me have a spiritual life. Having a devotional mother is kind of key in finding God and having a spiritual life, even if it's not great. Now, I don't think those prayers, I don't pray that way. Now I have a better way of praying based in the Sage-Mark system. But, prayer is, I don't want to say prayer is prayer because there's different levels of that. But that's what that's what this person's referring to. And the person said, Paul, faith is a gift. There's lots of evidence to support belief in Jesus, who Catholics consider the Son of God, one person of the Holy Trinity, God the Father and the Holy Ghost. How do people not receive their faith? How did people now receive their faith? His followers, saints, gave their lives, made ultimate sacrifice to evangelize and share the faith. Jesus has risen from the dead, as he said. He is the fulfillment of the law of prophets. He is mentioned in the history as well. My suggestion is to research about the Shroud of Turin, the Tilma of the Blessed Mother, who the Rosary is based. This person suggesting this, I know about all this stuff. I know about the Shroud of Turin. This is the covering, there was a cloth that covered Jesus' face. And there's an imprint of Jesus' face on it, possibly. But even if it's authentic, and I'm not saying it's not or it is, I don't know. But even if it is, it's no big deal. This isn't, proof of anything, right? He's not proof that he's the only Son of God, which I'll get into. Let me finish reading this comment here. It says here, my suggestion is to research about the Shroud of Turin, the Tilma of the Blessed Mother Mary, who the Rosary is based on, Our Lady of Guadalupe, incorrigible saints, the Eucharist miracles, miracles of Our Lady of Lourdes, miracles of the Son of Our Lady of Fatima. Look into the life of these other people, these all this other stuff, who bore the wounds of Jesus, who suffered and died out of the loves for us, so we can live in heaven in beatific vision of God forever. His saints gave their lives, suffered, and died because of Jesus, gave his life for them. Saints suffered awful deaths. Martyrs. I want to get into the martyr part. Martyrs of England hung, drawn, and quartered. Some were stoned or burnt alive. St. Joan of Arc. Why would someone sacrifice so much unless the faith was real? People sacrifice stuff for not faith. Most truthers online suggest we just don't rely on what is shared by them, but we check it out and verify what they presented. This is my challenge to you and your listeners. Check and research the information I've mentioned to verify its truth. And I have to open up the second comment here. And I have to make it bigger. And I do that here. It says to verify. Most truthers online suggest we just don't rely on what is shared by them, but that we check it out and verify what they presented. This is my challenge to you and your listeners, to check out and research the information I mentioned here to verify its truth. Consider this. God is so merciful, he lets you live in a fallen world with evil that exists, suffering and death only once. You do not have to come back and repeat it, and heaven is still there just one lifetime because Jesus died once for all. At the end of each video, you say only spirituality will save this world. The truth is only Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. We can save the world because he is Christ, the Son of the living God, as Peter, our first pope, who died crucified upside down, called him. I mean, I'm not laughing at that. I'm just saying like how effed up that is, right? That this person's using this as validation of their belief, that Peter was crucified upside down, and that somehow, Jesus, the Savior of the world, thank you, Jesus, for all you have done for us. Amen. Okay, so let me go back to the early part of this comment here. And the person says this, and I have to make it bigger again. It says this, you made a comment, consider this good, Paul, about the faith is a gift. There's lots of evidence to support the belief in Jesus. So the belief in Jesus, right? Now, I believe Jesus was real because of my whatever experiences as a Catholic and growing up with my parents. My mom had charismatic prayer meetings, right, at our home, and then we went and attended some things. In 8th grade and 7th grade and maybe 6th grade, I was a lot more into religion and Jesus, and then I got into drugs and did other things, and then eventually found spirituality, which was something better, something more advanced, right? More, it's on a higher level than all of these things that this person just said. And so some of Jesus' story is taken from other stories. Some of Jesus' story isn't his story. And you can see this. There's some stuff to do with the Egyptian, that Egyptian guy, I think it was Horus or one of those guys. But there's also stories that are taken in the Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition from the Mahabharata in India. And these stories are not, so it's a conglomeration, or I don't know, that's not the right word. Is it an amalgamation? Maybe it's amalgamation of various stories that make up the Christ story. But there was a person named Jesus who lived, and in terms of the Sage-Mark system of meditation, Jesus intercommuned with Babaji and is a part of the divine hierarchy that make up the Sage-Mark system. He's one of the souls or saints that participated in the creation of the system that we now call Sage-Mark, that was, that has the corrupt version of heartfulness with this guy Daji, who's a fallen saint or a fallen master, or whatever you want to, whatever way you want to look at it. But let's look at this other comment here. So I woke up, I was already thinking about this. I thought about it yesterday when I read this comment. I knew I was going to make this video, this voiceover. And then this morning when I woke up, I saw this comment on my phone. It just popped, it was like as soon as I opened my phone, this comment was just sitting there. The Council of Nicaea was the beginning of the split between, the beginning of the split between the Christian Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic, Western religion, especially Europe. This has been outlined in the Quran too. Even the African contingents at the council said they could never accept Jesus as being above the supreme source of all things. Now, the Council of Nicaea. So, the goal of the Council of Nicaea was to make Jesus not only into a saint or give him divinity, ascribe a divinity to him, but to make him the only Son of God and the only path to heaven. That there was a place called heaven, and the only way you could get into it was to embrace and worship Jesus. And so this was their goal. And if you're going to do research into your indoctrination as a Christian, you need to go no farther than this, right? Because no matter what Jesus was or wasn't, this was people who weren't saints, who didn't have divine vision, that had materialistic ends in terms of the power that their religion now has over the world, the influence of Christian religion. This is what I've been talking about with the influence of Judaism and Muslim, Islam, and Christianity, right? And there's a lot of blood and, this idea of martyrs, being a martyr. Being a martyr is not a good thing. It's not spiritually evolved. Being crucified isn't a sign of being divine. And being crucified upside down like Peter was, or decapitated, if you see what happened to all 12 of the disciples, and the level of violence and, the level of depravity that was around that period of time, it doesn't take much to figure out that just somebody with a little bit of spiritual evolution in that depraved part of the world and the religions that were available there, and, Judaism was like worshiping the devil, this divine, being, this so-called God in the Old Testament is a demon, right? And so it wasn't much for Jesus to raise the bar slightly above that. And what Jesus did in that place was meant for that place and the people there. Low-level people who didn't really have any understanding of God and, were worshiping all these various, it was just a violent, twisted, corrupt place. And it wasn't a good place, right? It wasn't a spiritual place. So Jesus had his assignment, and part of that was his journey to India, where he learned some of these Indian spiritual principles, which he brought back to that, the place in Bethlehem. So it wasn't, it wasn't like he had some divine incarnation. And the celebration of the martyr, the use of the cross, the blood, all these types of things, right? What do they call that? Stigmata, that, this blood and this martyrdom and the darkness and you're all sinners and all this crap is unnecessary. And it's bad. It's negative for a person and their spiritual growth and the darkness that surrounds it, right? And, the evil that, all this. There's a lot of darkness in these religions and all of them, and Christianity specifically in what I'm talking about. And so when men decide to, when they canonize someone as a saint, it doesn't mean anything, right? The good thing about spirituality, with all the BS and all the, all the tribalism and all the, the cliques and the various, groups you belong in and who are the cool kids and, how society deems some people winners and some people losers and how the system is rigged and gamed and all these things, right? And how you're judged and how, people see you and all these ways that are very subjective. And it doesn't mean anything. People given awards, like, Dodgy got some BS award in India, which apparently they paid for. It's just a joke, right? All these materialistic ways of validating. Look at the degrees I have. Oh, look at I have this level of education, or look, I won an Oscar, or, look, I'm a Super Bowl champion. Look at my ring. All these ways that people try to validate their success. It's all BS, right? It's all materialistic. I made so much money. Look at the car I drive. Look at my trophy wife. Whatever ways people have of validating their success. It means nothing, right? It means like there's this woman, something Sanchez, who's married to, Jeff Bezos of Amazon. And she and Kim Kardashian got into a bidding war over a dress, a Balenciaga, something like that. Dress. I'm going to cover this in my other channel. And they both paid $200,000 to have. First, it was proposed that they share the dress, like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I didn't see that movie, but it just seemed kind of, you know, lame. But and I think there was a Sister of the Traveling Pants too because there were so many unanswered questions. But anyways, there's and then the Balenciaga people decide to make two dresses, and so those dresses aren't worth $200,000, right? And they're not, I mean, it's a joke. It's obscene. And wearing that dress, like they'll think about how great they are or whatever. I got a $200,000 dress on. You got $100 dress or whatever it costs to make. Let's say it costs $500 to make. I mean, it's in terms of its materials. Like, how good could it be? It doesn't dress up that you're a piece of boop, that you have a bad heart and you're a corrupt person and you're materialistic and you're just spreading negative energy everywhere you go and bringing down consciousness to a lower level and all the evils that Amazon has perpetrated to make that money, or Kim Kardashian has done to infiltrate into the youth of the world and bring them down to a brat's level of existence, right? The low consciousness, the low vibrations. That dress doesn't erase any of those things, right? And so when a group of people say, oh, this guy was a saint, it doesn't mean anything. You're not an authority. The Council of Nicaea wasn't an authority. I'm not an authority. You're not an authority, right? Whatever we decide and judge people as, whatever we category we put people in, whatever we say about people. It's about your relationship with God. And wherever you are, that's where you are. There's no BSing it. And there's no, saying all these things, going back to what this person said. Actually, there's another comment here. I should read this one as well. And this person wrote, it kind of sounds like school thing where I'm the king. Oh yeah, well I'm the king of kings. And then another person wrote below it. This is the comment I wanted to read. I hate that I was raised and conditioned to have affection for Jesus out of the sense of fear. It's a miserable program that I don't know how to undo. I want to have appreciation of Jesus without the fear and programming. Well, this is what Babaji said, that religion have two tools, or weapons, whatever you want to call them. One is fear and the other is temptation. Fear of going to hell and temptation of going to heaven. And so these are the lies that you were indoctrinated with, which have warped your sense of, warped all of our sense of spirituality. And, it's a lot of people have turned away from God because of it. And the people who are so-called worshipers of God aren't doing anything because they consider themselves as lowly sinners. And all they have to do is worship Jesus and they get into heaven, which is a lie. Which was a lie made up by these people at the Council of Nicaea and other places. They realized if they could make Jesus the only Son of God and the only way to get to heaven, then they would own God. They would be the middleman between them and God. And that's a very profitable position and powerful position. And if we've seen it play out, it has been. And it's all based in lies. And you've all been indoctrinated with that. And whether you want to believe in that or not, that's up to you. Like I'm doing you a solid right now. And it's something you're not going to hear in other places. And so this person, going back to their comment here, the original thing that they said, and where they said, here, let me get a figure the thing. It says, you made a comment about consider this good. Paul, faith is a gift. There's lots of evidence to support belief in Jesus. Faith is the ability to believe in the impossible. Belief is the ability to believe in the impossible, to believe in the possible, which is an interesting way to look at it. But you're saying this thing about faith. There's a lot of pushback that I got from this video. Not a lot, but some. But over the years, I have had, I would say, maybe 10,000 comments, maybe more, where people have said that what I'm doing is a cult or demonic and I'm going to hell because I'm not having accepted Jesus. And this person's saying the same thing, right? As they, get into it and say all the stuff at the end of the thing of this, the end of their comment where they're saying Jesus is the only way and Jesus is the savior of the world and that, Christ is the son of the living God, all these things, right? And so they're saying this person's saying this to me that, and a lot of people said, oh, I hope that you'll find Jesus or whatever. It doesn't matter if you say it in a nice way. You don't matter if you say it in a mean way. It doesn't matter how you say it because the problem about this, and I don't get offended by something, but what you're doing is offensive and it's wrong. And you're trying to suck me into something that's of a lower standard, of a lower outcome of what I'm already doing. I've evolved out of your thing, your indoctrination. Like I was indoctrinated with it too, and I, bought into it. But my own mom, who's the one that, was the big Catholic, the big religious person in my family, she had this moment where she saw these native peoples. We were in Canada. It was like Ottawa or something. And there were some native people, some Indian people, right? And she goes, look at these beautiful people. My mom had a connection there or something. And she said to me, I can't imagine that these people will go to hell. And I was like, wow, what are you talking about, right? Like I didn't know. I didn't understand all this stuff with, John 3:16 and all this stuff. And, now years later, I understand. See, I understand your point of view, and I know what your indoctrination is. And Jesus was a legitimate spiritual person. Not because I say so, because he obtained something spiritual, right? There is there's evidence that he was a spiritual person, but that's all. He was a saint. He wasn't the only son of God, and he wasn't the only ticket to heaven. And all these other people, the crimes that have been committed by the Christian people, the manifest destiny, and the Queen of England, the King of England, thinking that they're God's representative on earth and they're head of their own church and what they're doing is God's will, and they're spreading Jesus to these people, so they're saving people. So this idea that you're saving people is a joke. And you believing it is a joke. It's not true, and it's evil. It's done evil. You're not saving anybody. Most of these people that were living in these aboriginal places, living in other places in the world, who were innocently worshiping whatever they were worshiping, and they had their own culture, and they had their own belief system, and these European a-holes went over to there, these missionaries, and indoctrinated these people into something that isn't true. It's based in lies and manipulation. Jesus isn't the only son of God. Hello? The evidence is overwhelming. And I know what you believe, and it's okay for you guys to say to me, Paul, what you're doing is a cult, or what you're doing is demonic, and you're going to hell because you're doing it. But when I say this to you, you get all butthurt and whiny, because deep down I'm telling you the truth. Deep down you are, you don't really have faith, because it wouldn't upset you otherwise. I've listened to you guys say this to me over the years, just banned people, deleted comments, whatever, banned people, I don't delete comments. And very seldom have I talked about it. But it's offensive, and what you're doing is it's like you're trying to peddle me drugs. It's spiritual drugs. It's worse than drugs. You're trying to get me to do something that is bad for me, that is worse for me than what I got going on with Saj Mark. I got something that works for me, and you're trying to take that away from me. You want to undermine my confidence in that, right? And so I don't, this is my channel. I don't go to your place and say what I'm saying to you now. I don't come to your house. I don't go to your platform or your Facebook page and argue with you about this stuff. That's your space, right? I don't go to any Christian channel. I don't go to a church or any of these things and tell you what I'm telling you. I'm telling you here in my channel. And this is my MNFN channel. And this is, my universe. This is my internal universe. This is my thoughts and beliefs. And this is what I say here. And you guys keep on coming in here with your comments and your attitudes, telling me something that I know to be wrong. And you know it to be wrong, and you just don't want to admit it. The reason you probably found me is because deep down some part of you is begging for you to throw off your indoctrination and realize that you've been played and lied to. Because it's the stupidest deal that you could ever be given, where someone else can die for your sins. How the hell does that work, right? I mean, why would somebody else be able to die for your sins? That makes no sense. Why would God allow that? Because he's merciful? That you could go sitting and killing people and, raping them and doing all kinds of, whatever it is, hurting people. And you can do the worst possible things, cheating people, lying to people, destroying the environment, killing, random, animals, just wiping out whatever it is, right? Building atomic bombs and dropping it on people. I mean, what do you think the worst thing is that you could do? You could do the worst things in the world, but it's okay. We got you covered. Jesus already died for you. He's fighting for your right to party. Like, you can party all you want, go out there and have a good time, just engage in demonic worship, do the worst possible things. But if you repent and accept Jesus, he's already got you covered. He died for your sins and you're getting into heaven. Like, it's the stupidest deal. Like, you believe that? Like, you actually believe that, right? You believe that you can do the worst possible things, and Jesus died for that. And it's a blank check for everybody who, goes out and does, whatever they want to do, wreaks havoc on this planet. And then they're going to get a one-off and get into this imaginary place called heaven that doesn't exist, right? Because they created it when they sold you this, bag of crap, thinking that you didn't have to do anything spiritually. And it's hurt the world. It has, done irreparable damage. Well, maybe not irreparable, but horrible damage to the people on this planet and the world itself. Because it means that you don't have to work and become a spiritual person and connect to God directly. You only have to smile and fake like you're kind and, fake like you're sincere and a nice person and you've accepted Jesus and go to church and, accept that you're a piece of crap sinner and you're never going to be anything else. But as long as you believe that, you're getting this one-way ticket into this place. But God forbid you don't believe that because you're going to the other place, and that's bad. And it's just like, it's stupid. Like, it's such a remedial, con job. Like, it's the reason you fall for Trump and you fall for Q is because you fell for this other ridiculous con job. What do you think is going to happen in 20,000 years? You think Jesus' religion's going to be there, that people are going to know Jesus, and it's going to be gone. This religion's going to be gone. It might be gone in 100 years. All these religions. They might be gone in 1,000 years. I mean, it might be gone in 10 years. Who knows? It'll be whatever people remember it. There's been lots of religious and spiritual movements on this planet, and none of them have really survived past the last 5,000 years. Only Hinduism with Lord Rama, Krishna and Rama were incarnations of the same soul, Vishnu, the same spirit Vishnu, the god of preservation. And I'm not sure how long ago Rama lived, but Rama's basically a myth, right? But it's one of the long-lasting ones. And let's say Rama lived 50,000 years ago. That's one person who's made it 50,000 years. And in 100,000 years, none of this stuff's going to matter. Whatever happens between now and 100,000 years from now, a million years from now, these religions are all gone. And so how can these people who lived before Jesus or live after everyone forgets about Jesus, they don't get a chance, they don't get a shot at heaven? It's stupid. They just conned you. It doesn't make sense, right? That there'd only be one son and only one shot at heaven. And you didn't have to do anything to get in but accept Jesus. You don't have to connect to God directly because you can't do that because you're just a piece of crap sinner. You can't connect to God directly. Why would you even try that? Only one guy can do that. That's Jesus. A guy who said me, I all the time. I am this, I am that. I am that I am, all these things, right? I, me. There's a lot of ego with Jesus. He's not, he was okay. He did good. Like, he got his level of spiritual attainment, but they made him into a god. At Council in Nicaea and other places, they made him into a god. He didn't reach a level that was, he reached whatever level he reached. And, he did a good job in a horrible place. I'm not taking anything away from him, his accomplishments, but they've exaggerated his accomplishments and sold you a big bag of crap. And you want me to look into stuff I already know about, right? I know what's happened. You're coming here because I have something to offer you. You're not offering me something. Like, I already know I know your situation. You can't even comprehend my situation because you haven't even stepped on the spiritual field yet, right? You've bought into something that isn't going to be delivered to you. There is no heaven in the way that you look at it, right? And so, there's Babaji, the second master of Sajmark system. And, in my belief system and the people who have done Sajmark, Babaji was the most advanced spiritual person. And I don't expect you to accept that or believe that. Like, you have to have that, and you should. You have to have that in some sort of experience. And I've had some experience of it. Some of it I just believe because I've had positive experiences. And this is what this person's saying that they did, right? But I'm aware of that. Like this person saying, well, there's a Shroud of Turin and there's all these people were martyrs and they died. And why would they die for something that wasn't real? Well, they died for something that was spiritual, but it wasn't, the level that you think. There was no heaven. There was no, it's coming from a bad religion in a bad place. And there was a spiritual, being. And if you were around somebody like that, right? If you were around somebody that was evolved just a little bit, you would, some people would follow that person and be like, wow, I'll give anything for this. This is real. This is so much better than anything else in the world. And that's, the people who have done the Sajmark system know what I'm talking about, right? That who've experienced the transmission on a level, and it's not that many people. There's lots of people who do this practice, and it's all folded. It's embarrassing what's happened to this system that has been transformational in my life and many people, and how quickly they threw their spiritual master under the bus, which I'll get into in a bit, right? I mean, this has been my experience, and it's, human beings suck, and, even ones who are saintly and have good spiritual samskaras and have had past lives doing, something spiritual, they, they folded like a card house. I mean, it's like, it's so bad. Like it's, but let me get back to this thing first and I'll get to that. So, Babaji intercommuned with Jesus a few times. He intercommuned with these various saints and souls. And one time he had these people from Denmark who had some questions about Jesus. And Babaji intercommuned with Jesus and said, and Babaji didn't know much about Jesus' story. He hadn't been educated in the Christian tradition. Babaji was a small, uneducated man that worked as a babu or clerk. And he would smoke this hookah, like his tobacco pipe. And he didn't eat that much, very small, frail man, like 5'4", 120 pounds, something like this, right? And he would sit there in a circle with these people would come and visit him, and he would clean and transmit this divine energy to their hearts when he cleaned them, right? And he would, they would ask him questions, and he didn't know anything. And so he would go into a spiritual state, and he would get the answer directly from the divine, the whatever you want to call it, the Akashic records, or in this case, Jesus directly. He would go and ask Jesus directly. So people asked him about Jesus, and he didn't know anything about Jesus. So he went and he intercommuned with Jesus, and he asked him questions. And he said that Jesus had a spiritual fall at the end of his life, and it was because of Mary. And these people from Denmark, and I don't know where the transcript is, and I'd read it to you for verbatim if I had it, but I don't. Like, I don't have it in my possession. I read it. I used to. But, that's a whole nother story. And amongst other works and things. But there was these video transcript, and, this was caught on video somewhere. There was a video of this. And they said, what, Mother Mary? He had a spiritual fall because of Mother Mary. And Babaji said, I don't know, let me go ask him. And Babaji goes, ask Jesus, and Jesus says, no, Mary Magdalene. They had a relationship. So, there was some kind of spiritual fall that was associated with her, and, like maybe he lost faith, and I don't know what happened. That's what women can do to you. But there was another time he intercommuned with Jesus, and Jesus gave Babaji, wanted Babaji to oversee the Christian, tradition, the churches, and, he was fed up by what happened with his teachings. He was disappointed in the religions and the people there, which was obvious, because of course he was, because they were lying about him, and the direction of power, and, it's really turned into something that's abhorrent. And all the crimes that have been committed in Jesus' name by Christians, European Christians, right? Who can't, they have even the pictures of Jesus as a white Christian European man. That's not, Jesus wasn't from Europe. He didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. I don't know what Jesus looked like, but he didn't look like that, right? And that's, your white Jesus. Like, you can't even accept what Jesus looked like. If you saw Jesus, if you could go back in time and you saw Jesus, you'd be disappointed. He wouldn't be the Jesus that you were taught about. He would be a human being with problems and issues. He'd have a different kind of energy, which you may or may not be able to feel, but you wouldn't be able to accept him. If he's incarnated now, which I believe he might be incarnated now as a different person. I don't know if he's a man or a woman or what race he is or where he is or if he even's here. But you could come across him and you wouldn't see him as Jesus, and he wouldn't be telling you the things that your religion's telling you. Jesus' second coming. He had past lives, which he talked about. Jesus talked about his past lives. It's in the Gnostic Gospels. It was edited out by they took stuff out of the Bible that hurt their story. With the fact that Jesus believed in past lives, killed their whole one-off scam that you were lived one life and then you went to heaven or hell, which is stupid. Your soul is eternal. Where was your soul before this? Your soul was somewhere. Where was it? It's not talked about in Christianity because they don't want you to know. Your soul was somewhere before, and it's going somewhere after. I'm telling you this because this is information that might, it might be true or not. Like, you don't know. I'm not saying accept what I'm saying as gospel, and I don't say that about anything I say. I don't want that responsibility. This is my understanding of things. I have no way to prove it to you, and I have whatever, some things I know, some things I just believe, right? Some things are experiences that I can, validate, through experience, and then other things are just, this is what I think has happened. That's what I do here. Like, I don't know. I can't, I've been right a lot, but that doesn't mean anything, right? Does it mean I'm right this time? Because I've been wrong, and I make mistakes, and my perception is 100%, right? This is something that I'm, sharing with you, but your indoctrination is definitely wrong. The stuff that you've been fed is lies. Is what I'm saying the truth? I don't know. You have to figure that out. But what you've been told already is lies. And so this guy Babaji, when he was, I think he wrote this in his diaries, he found that the best you could get out of Christianity was something he called salvation. And that was a 17-year reprieve between your present life and your next life. That if you were a really good Christian and you did, really good Christian things, you wouldn't have to be incarnated again for another 17 years. Your soul could go, and this is a big thing because a little bit of a respite is a big thing. The bad souls, the negative souls, they die, and then they're pulled into a pregnancy almost immediately. And that's why the bad souls are very confused. They're confused about their sexuality. They're confused about all kinds of things because they haven't even processed their old life, and they're already living a new life. And they usually get put in bad circumstances, bad parents, abusive situations, war-torn places, and they live in very horrible circumstances because they have a lot of heavy samskaric burden. And they immediately go from one bad life to another bad life. And they don't have any respite. They don't have any time to process and to reflect and then plan their next life. And so 17 years isn't a bad thing. Like, that's not a bad deal for those people who are good Christians. So you get something, right? But you don't get what's called liberation, which is freedom from these successive lives in one incarnation after another. Because you're bound here. Like everything else, you have to graduate. You have to do something. You have to pass tests. You have to pass challenges. There's a bar, right? You have to clear that bar to get out of this, this earthbound existence where you're bound to Earth, this prison planet, right? Your soul is bound here, and to evolve out of that, you have to do something. You have to achieve something spiritually. You have to connect to God and get on a higher level. And to my understanding, Jesus got liberation, but that was it. Like, barely got that. He just, and I'm not sure. He had a spiritual fall. I'm not sure if he got that or not. But that's my understanding, that Jesus just barely crossed that bar, but has to come back and do work and things voluntarily because Jesus, in some of his teachings, he left a mess, right? That is, some of the stuff he said has been misused, and also he shouldn't have said it because it was egotistical to say them. There's a lot of ego in his teachings, a lot of I and me and things like this, right? And so it isn't like he was rocking it. He certainly was a spiritually evolved person, but he could have done better. And what he left has been, turned into something evil and something bad. And a big part of that is all of the Christian people don't think they have to work at their own spiritual evolution. They just have to accept Jesus. That's a huge problem. And it's indoctrinated into so many people, and, they don't want to give up that. They think they got a good deal, so they don't want to give that up, right? And let me go back to this, right? Something's either true or it's not. Either Jesus is the only Son of God or he's not. And your belief or faith it's not something you can vote on. It doesn't matter if 1 billion people believe Jesus is the only way or 2 billion people is the only way to get into heaven. If that's a lie, that's a lie. You ain't getting into heaven. Like God's going to go, okay, well, you guys really believe this, so you really had faith in this, so I'm going to create a heaven for you guys because, gosh darn it, no, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what I believe or what you believe. Only thing that matters is the truth. And the truth is there isn't only one Son of God. And that's a story that was, you can trace it back and see where it was manipulated into that story. When Council of Nicaea and these religions ever since. They saw that this was a good deal. If they told people this, they would own those people. Those people would be enslaved to them on a spiritual level, and they would work for them, and they would be a power block, and they could manipulate these people, and they could get all kinds of things out of these people because these people were thinking they were getting a one-way ticket to heaven because they were lied to by these people who created the religion. They warped Jesus' story for their own personal gain and benefit. It's there for anybody to see. It's just you have to have the strength to see it. You have to have the ability to say, yeah, I've been duped. My parents were duped, and we're all duped, right? And my religion has caused all kinds of pain and suffering in this world, and taken people away from their souls and their soul's path, and has minimized people's own participation in their spiritual evolution. Okay, so I just went and ate breakfast. I had to take a break. So usually about 40 minutes into it, I start getting tired and doing a voiceover. But this will be a standalone video. There's a clip out there of the Speaker of the House, the former Speaker of the House, whatever that guy's name is, cheap-shotting, elbowing another guy. And it's great. It's really entertaining. And I was going to include that in the beginning of this video. I might still do that. I don't know. But this thing's going to be probably close to 2 hours as it is. So we'll see what happens. So I want to get back into where I left off here. But I want to say this first. So of all the people that are telling you things about Jesus, I'm the only one that doesn't care about any of it, right? Like in terms of, I'm not doing this for money. This hurts my channel. Christians will listen to this and there's lots of Christians who listen to my videos and this is going to bum them out and they'll leave or whatever, And I'm not trying to convert you because I don't want you to do my thing. I mean, it's great if you do it, but I don't, it's not better for me. I don't get like some bonus points because people do gratefulness, right? I'm not selling you something like, people would say, oh, you want to be a leader, a cult leader or whatever. And that's obviously not true. Like I'm not somebody, I don't need your approval. I don't need your praise. I don't need anything from you, right? I'm not looking for followers. Like everybody should know that. I'm not, I do I do things to push people away, like this is going to push people away. And I'm not doing it for that reason. But, I always have that tendency. Like I do more to, hurt myself as a person, make people dislike me or disagree with me. And I say the truth in ways that, people are going to be upset. And, I could be less truthful. I mean, is that what you think I should do? Be less truthful? Be less honest? I have a little bit of a membership program here that I talked about briefly. I don't bring it up. Once in a while I say this video is demonetized and, I'm doing this for free. And, if people want to contribute, they can contribute or whatever. And I got some merch. It took me, some whatever merch. It took me years to get out there. And I don't talk about it. I don't talk about, hey, subscribe to my channel. Hey, subscribe to my membership program. I don't bring these things up. Like I'm not, I don't say, oh, go do gratefulness or whatever, and I have the way, and I'm not trying to be some spiritual guru because clearly I don't want that, right? Anybody who knows me, listen to my journey series, and know the way that I, do things or the way that I am oriented. I'm not into any of that stuff. I don't want it. I don't think it's good for me. I'm not here for that, right? I'm here for what I do here. This is what God's made me into, and I'm good at telling people the blunt truth, right? In various ways. Maybe it might not be the truth, but it is, more, it's more truthful than what you've gotten. Whereas your religion has benefited from the power it has over you, the story it has over you, right? And for Christians, right, so let's go back to this, what this woman said here. This is the key part. Like, this is the key part of her, displaying herself without realizing she's displaying it here. And so, it goes to the martyrs of England, hung and drawn and quartered. Some were stoned or burnt alive. Saint of Joan Arc. Why would some sacrifice so much unless the faith was real? Most truthers online suggest we just don't rely on what is shared by them, but we check it out and verify what they have presented. Why don't you verify what you've presented? So your one belief, you're clinging to your faith. Your faith is not real faith because deep down it's not true. You're clinging to a false narrative. And this person, there's one thing that they're saying about this is, well, these people were tortured because of their belief in Christ. And if it wasn't real, then why were they tortured? Well, there are people who go and do, they strap explosives on them, and they're promised 70 virgins and a mule in some bogus heaven, and they go do these martyr crimes. Why would they do that if it wasn't real? They're just crazy, but your guys weren't? Oh, those guys are just crazy. People die in wars. They do horrific things. For what? For belief in America. They don't even believe in God. Or some of them do, some of them don't. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. People suffer in war. They suffer all kinds of things for lesser beliefs. And so they're wrong. Like, they're wrong, and the issue here is, in terms of all this martyrdom, let me get into this. The reason Jesus was murdered and turned on in a horrific way, and his disciples were also, mauled and mutilated and tortured in these things, is because the people in that region are power hungry and have a demonic, egotistical, violent orientation to the world. And anybody who becomes spiritual and says things, and a spiritual person threatens their system. If everyone was spiritual, our economic system would collapse. If everyone became spiritual, because you would consume less, just based in just that subtle of a thing, and that would make the system. And you wouldn't be as easily manipulated if you were spiritual, because you would serve God and not the master, the almighty dollar. And all these religions serve the almighty dollar and religious power, and they're not serving God. And they're disconnecting you from God on purpose. They don't want you to connect to the divinity within you. And so there's all these BS stories that they tell you, and they're not true. Jesus couldn't protect himself, and he couldn't protect his disciples. He didn't have that level of spiritual whatever it was, right? These miracle things are, miracle is a low-level thing. Manipulating material life with spiritual energy, especially if you don't have God's permission, which to my understanding Jesus didn't. Like, Jesus was showing off with his miracles, which was, it to people who are simple, they see something like that and it's enough to get them to believe. But it didn't transform those people. It didn't help them connect the divinity within them. It was just Jesus showing off. It didn't have any spiritual benefit. It just showed that he was capable, that he was on the next level. He was on a higher level, not the highest level. He was on a higher level than the low-life people that lived in this violent, corrupt time, right? And they killed him for it. They killed him for having some spiritual evolution because he was a threat to their evil system. And that's why he was murdered. That's why all these people. It wasn't because he was God's only son. He didn't give his life for your sins, none of these things. There's no That was just something they made up. And the people who killed him who were power hungry people, the people who were scared of him and scared. This is, Western people kill their saints. The Western world, starting in the Middle East and going through Europe and now, of course, America. If you become a spiritual person, they want to myrtleize you, right? Because you're a threat to them. And in other countries in the East, particularly India, saints are celebrated. And so if you're a saint born in the Western countries, it sucks for you. Like, you're a spiritual person. And it doesn't mean they're going to kill you. It's going to mean that they're going to try to destroy you and tell you you're a piece of crap, because everything that you're being told, whether it be have a killer instinct, whether it be the violence of the American system, whether it be the meanness and they want to harden you up. They want you take away your softness, your sensitivity, which is what connects you to God. Your heart has to be soft to connect to God, and they harden your heart and they make you into a hard person, and that's what your religion's doing for you, and selling you out to this beastly system that wants to create soldiers, American military, and create football and the violence in our culture and our movies and things. And now, whatever it's creating, now it's just creating these hedonistic, weak little, whatever this generation is, right? You see it happening, and it's all based in a faulty religion. If you had a true compass, you had a good spiritual organization, a connection to God, none of this stuff would be happening. It's because your religion sucks. Christianity sucks it's a materialistic system. But those same people that killed Jesus and killed his disciples, the same kinds of people, the same types of people, they're the ones who decided to, hey, let's take this story, we'll turn him into a martyr, we'll say, hey, this guy died for your sins. They'll make up this story and manipulate people who appreciate martyrdom and appreciate violence and blood, and are very the people in Europe are very heavy, like they're very mental, they're very materialistic. This is it's a very there was very thug like or whatever. And so this story appealed to them, right? Because of the blood and the drama and the betrayal and all these manipulations and his followers and Judas and all these things in it, right? It appealed to those people's psyches. Like, they couldn't get a pure spiritual being that lived this good spiritual life in a very simple way with no drama. They like the drama. And you can see they like the drama because look at the drama that's in our TV shows and movies. People of the West like drama, right? And are materialistic. The Europeans were good at one thing, and that was war and technology. I mean, they stole some of the technology, like gunpowder, from China, and like a lot of the things that were invented in India. I mean, they weren't like good inventors, but they were good at applying this technology. They were good at military strategy. They were good at subjectifying people, turning them into subjects. Colonizing them. They were good at that, right? They won those wars. They good. They had a plan. They knew how to do that. They conquered these worlds. They conquered the Aboriginal people. That didn't mean God was with them. That didn't mean that they were more spiritual, that that their religion was better than what the belief systems of these people were. That didn't mean that. It just meant that they were better militarily, right? And so, it didn't mean that they won the spiritual wars. It didn't mean the Crusades, they lost the Crusades. That didn't mean that the Muslim people were superior because their religion fought off the indoctrination. None of the things matter in terms of this stuff, right? There's a violence and there's a different orientation to the world that people of Europe had. And they conquered it. They conquered the world, right? Britain mostly, and these other countries, America and these other places. And because of that, they indoctrinated and forced their belief system on people. Didn't mean it was the right belief system. It was the same type of attitude that killed Jesus. The same, subjectifying these, enslaving these people in Africa and taking the lands in America and looking at these people as savages and looking down at them and saying that, oh, they're all going to hell, so we're saving them, and we're doing them a favor and we take their land and all these things, right? And exploit them and force our culture on them. And so it was all lies, right? And that's there's punishment for that. There's there's consequences for that kind of behavior. It's not going to go unnoticed, and it's the kind of behavior now that's going to take down the world with the selfishness that's going on in Israel and with the Muslim people and all these people. They're willing to blow up the whole world because of their warped faith, their warped belief. Christians along with them, right? These three religions that are dominating this planet right now, that have the majority of people. Over half the people subscribe to these religions, and a lot of people who don't subscribe to these religions were brought up in these religions. They've left the religions, but their indoctrination is still there. They're in reaction to it. They're in reaction to this belief system, their indoctrination. They haven't evolved out of it, right? They've suffered the trauma of Christianity and of Islam and of Judaism. They've suffered these things. They've suffered it's like being abused, right? When you're abused, you can either abuse somebody else, abuse yourself, or cope. Transform the abuse into something divine, to transform the abuse into something next level. You can find a way to be grateful to God and, not perpetrate the same crap that you've been taught either on yourself or somebody else, right? Not to move it forward, but to let it, be transformed in your system in some way. And that's available in the Sajmark system and cleaning, and not that it, guaranteed to work, right? My parents had these prayer meetings when I was like 5, 6 years old, as whatever it was. I think I was a good kid most of the time. I don't remember getting into trouble. I wasn't somebody who backtalk. I was always quiet, thoughtful. But my mom had catechism, it was a Catholic, Sunday school. But it was like Wednesday night or something at our house. And I was like a total brat. I remember being sent to my room every time. Like I was more comfortable. Like I became like a wise guy, things I wasn't normally, like I was quiet in school or whatever it is. But I didn't really trust my parents. And like I was smarter than them. Like I was more evolved. Like my consciousness was higher than theirs. When we played games and board games and things like this, like I would always win because my parents were like, like their minds didn't work as quickly and whatever. And they had done things where I'd lost my trust in them. Like I remember I was like 7 or 8 and I had like a lip sore or something, some kind of, maybe had a cold and was blowing my nose or whatever. And, there was, my mom put salve, like some Neosporin on my face right below my nose, like a big glump of it. It looked like a big giant booger and sent me to school. And so, I realized in the moment where my classmates realized that I had a giant booger on my lip that I could no longer trust my mob. I had to kind of figure out anything that they were dressing me in or whatever it was. Like my mom was not my friend and wasn't, someone I could trust to, do the right thing. But later on, and my dad was, more incompetent than my mom. And I started to see this as a kid, right? Like I knew I was on my own. Like, a couple of times I had these realizations that I was on my own, right? The first time was my dad and I were walking around a pond. It's my earliest memory. And there was a lily pad, and it was, the lily pad hadn't opened up yet. So it was, or it might have been like a flower, I don't know, like, whatever it was. But I thought it was a frog because I was like 4. I was, I remember I was wearing, I had this like little, matching kind of almost like a onesie type of thing, right? And my dad said, no, it's not a frog. And we argued about it. And my dad said, okay, like, grab it. So my dad took my hand and I leaned over and I'm reaching out for the frog. I'm completely off balance. I'm just being supported by his hand. And he opened his hand and let me fall into the water and fall in this dirty pond water. And he laughed, right? And like, it was like an adult moment I had. I'm like, oh, my dad's an asshole. Like, like I'm like, you're on your own. Your dad's an asshole. Like I had this like, realization that I couldn't trust this guy. He was a loser and an asshole, right? So anyways, they had this prayer meeting and they had these people over their house. And there was a famous actor named Maurice Chevrolet or something like this, French guy. And there was a guy who was there and that was his name and his wife. They seemed like nice people and they had some kids that came over. They seemed like nice kids. But their family fell apart. They ended up getting divorced. And they were the co-leaders with my mom. My dad really didn't believe in God, but he believed in being the center of attention. So he was there. And there was this one guy, he he would witness. He would say the same thing at every meeting until they told him to shut up, like this kind of thing. And they had these, these prayer meetings. They talked about Jesus and whatever, whatever was going on, and life events. And there was things, whatever normal or things that I was struggling with that my parents ended up talking about to these people. And then these kids started to talk to me about them, right? Like they knew stuff about me that I was kind of uncomfortable as a private person. And so I was like, WTF? And I went to my parents and I said, are you telling these people, things about me? Because their kids know things about me that, like whatever it is, right? And like my parents are like, no, they lied. And I'm like, what do you think? You're going to outsmart me? Like we've already proven I'm smarter than. And I lost faith in God because of that. Because I saw the hypocrisy of all these people, right? I saw these people as very flawed, and they were supposed to be religious people. And these were people who were more committed to God than the normal people. Like they would not only go to church, but they would also go to these charismatic retreats, and they were into their religion more than other people. They would speak in tongues and, things like this. They were, they did things beyond just the requirements. And some of them seemed spiritual or saintly or whatever. Some of these nuns were pretty cool, and they were, they were definitely devoted. They didn't have the nun experience. I didn't have a bad Catholic upbringing. I didn't have a, abusive priest or, some things like some people have experienced, right? But I saw the hypocrisy. I'm like, these people aren't any better, and I started to see like people who when we turned 14, I started smoking pot. That my friends who were doing drugs, and I was, when you're a kid, like, oh my God, marijuana will kill you, like the kind of stuff they would tell you. And I saw that these people are at least honest about who they were, right? They weren't trying to front and pretend to be something they're not. And so I left religion, but it wasn't, I never thought it out. Like it wasn't like I had a problem with God. I had a problem with people who were worshiping God, right? Like I didn't have a problem with God. Wasn't the problem. It was people that were the problem. And I didn't realize that till years later when I started doing the Sajmark system. It isn't a reflection of God that people who say that they're godly people suck, right? Who are maybe worse than sinners. They talk about other people being sinners, but they're worse sinners. And you find all these priests and all these, reverends and all these televangelists who do like depraved things and get caught and say, oh my God, I've fallen, I'm a sinner, and all that crap. Because the religion is flawed. It's not that God's flawed, it's a sucky religion. And lots of these religions, they all suck, right? And it isn't that it's God's fault that religion sucks. It's human beings who go in and warp and twist the religion. And that's what's happened to these religions. Doesn't mean Jesus sucks, but the religion has sold Jesus as something that he's not. They've given powers that he didn't have. They give him a position he doesn't have. And they've said things about him that he can't do. And they've made up stories about it. And they've changed the story or the interpretation of the story, where the martyrdom is a good thing. And the martyrdom isn't isn't something that shows you how great Jesus and his disciples were for experiencing torture and these things, because it wasn't something that was something you should emulate or something that you should aspire to. It just showed you how bad people are to people who are spiritual. What we do to our saints in the West. And it's pretty pervasive. And it doesn't have to be physical torture. It could be emotional torture. It could be, they want to take people who are spiritual and they want to break them. They want to, turn them into materialistic people. They want to turn them into hardened people. They want to take their spiritual energy and use it for evil. And that's happened to all of you at a young age. When I was doing the Sajmark system and the idea of being soft being a good thing, having a soft heart, being sensitive. And I thought about that, and I was like, if somebody called you soft and you played it like a playground basketball, you were supposed to fight them, or at least, prove to them that you weren't soft, right? When they call athletes soft, when they call a defense soft, if they call you soft, it means you're weak and you're pathetic and you're a pussy, right? Whatever. And, I thought about that. I'm like, just think about how something that is necessary, like you have to have a soft heart to be a spiritual person. You have to be compassionate. You have to be empathetic. You have to feel the pain that there is to feel. and how they numb us to the pain. And they, say that being sensitive or soft is a form of weakness. And they want you to be violent, and they want you all these things that they want out of you. But then when you are violent, you'll lock you up or whatever, right? It's a twisted system we live in. And spiritual people who have, sensitivity and the ability to operate on a higher level of consciousness are beaten down from the day you're born by your family, by your school system, by your, culture, by, your TV and everything that's there. They want to make you depressed, or they want to make you angry, or they want to get rid of that asset that you have, which is a soft heart. If you're spiritually evolved, they want you to, be a materialistic person, so they have to break you. They have to make sure that you don't become what you're meant to become, because you're going to influence other people. You're going to bring them up. You're going to, tell the truth. You're going to speak truth to a deceptive system. And your freaking bogus religion has sold you out, right? Sold your spiritual nature out to this, this BS story and these false promises, these promises that they can't make good on, of heaven and hell and these other things, right? And you watch, I'll get comments. People will just comment on the title, or they'll get triggered, they'll comment, and they'll just do the same thing. They'll post biblical quotes using the Bible to validate their warped belief system, because they can't deal with their indoctrination. And, you can ask Jesus directly. I had a conversation with somebody. I said some of these things in a much more mild way years and years ago. And some Christian guy come in, he argued with me. I said, just ask Jesus. And he came back and said, I did, and Jesus said you were wrong. Like you didn't ask Jesus, you just sold that out, right? This happened in the Sage-Mark system, in the Heartfulness system, something that I'm going through right now. There was 3 legitimate spiritual masters, and I had spent time with the third, Master Chargy. And he was a transformational being. And he worked exhaustively under physical pain and suffering, migraine headaches, and even towards the end of his life, he lived into his 80s, and he had all this physical issues going on. He still went out there and worked every day and sacrificed and cleaned and transmitted to people and made people, made himself available to people. And he wrote all these great books and gave all these great talks, and he built ashrams, and he had an epic life. And it's transformational, and he pulled people up, and he turned the keys over to this system. And he created spiritually, because this is how the system works, where cleaning and transmission and spiritual gifts are given to the people that do the system, and then to the successor, the spiritual representative. He turns them into a potential master. And I saw this happen to this guy Kamlesh, who I knew for a number of years, and I saw him transform into the master. But he slowly just turned into a piece of shit, like not only corrupt, but stupid, dumb, like an idiot, like a buffoon, like a Don Knotts kind of, incompetent putz, right? Hard to watch, because I saw what he was certainly evolved, and he was into it, and, he's a better, more committed person than I am. I'm not all that committed to you all or anybody else, right? I've seen what happened to these guys who, you can look at Jesus, but you can look at, people throughout history, and human beings always turn on them. Human beings always, let them down, even in India and places like that, right? Maybe not where they crucify them, but, all these things. And so, I'm not into that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not getting anything out of this. All I'm doing is telling you at least a more truthful version of the crap you've been fed your whole life as a Christian, right? And I don't benefit from it personally, other than it's what I do here, and it's what God wants me to do, and I'll do that, right? That doesn't mean I want you to tag along with me, and I want a bunch of followers, because I don't. Go, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. I don't need you weighing me down, right? So I'm not, I'm much more, I don't want to say selfish, but realistic, and, about how bad people suck, right? I mean, people have divinity in them. I see it. Everyone has divinity in them, but people just don't respond to it, don't reach for it, don't, and this happened in the Sage-Mark system. And so Kamlesh, this guy fell, Dodgy fell, and it was painful for me, right? Because I knew him, and we were kind of like friends, and he was, good to me in different ways. I felt some loyalty towards him. He took an interest in me, whatever. but I couldn't deny what happened, right? As painful as it was, because it meant the system that I, love so much is at the threat of just turning into one of these other crappy religions, like I've been talking about your religions, right? Like it easily could become that, and it's already becoming that right now. Unless something happens, I have faith that there's a possibility that something else could happen, right? And I'm doing my best to preserve what's there and encouraging other people to do that. And I've set up the gratefulness meditation where there's sittings and things available, like for people to experience what I've had the blessing to experience for the last 30 years. But it's painful, but I can't deny the truth, right? As painful as it is. And I would rather have the truth than be in denial. And the majority of people who do the system, and many of them talked about how much they love Chargy. Like they would weep when Chargy would, I talk about this extensively in the Journey series videos. They would weep when they had to leave Chargy's presence and, master this and master that, a lot of the Indians, but people from all over the world. And Daji has basically said Chargy failed. Not basically, he's come out and said it. And he's done it in a dickish way, trying to get rid of Chargy's birthday celebration. I mean, scrub all of Chargy's written material. And Chargy was his master. For 30 years, he was, he was tagging along with Chargy and spending as much time with Chargy. It was a privileged position, right? And becoming Chargy's disciple and his successor, and then he's crapped all over his legacy. And all these people who said they love Chargy have just allowed this guy to do it. And they know this guy's a putz because they don't watch his videos, they don't listen to him, they don't read his crappy books. They don't love him like they love Chargy. But he holds a position, right? He's the, legitimate master and president of the position of the system. He has this position in the system. And they've thrown him under the bus. And that's painful for me to see. Like these people who, many of them I know are, they're better than I am at this. They're better practitioners of the system. But they're weak in this way because they can't face the truth. They can't admit to what I've admitted to here, what I've admitted to myself has happened, right? Which I've accepted, not admitted, accepted. And ultimately working to be grateful for and realizing this is, there must be some spiritual benefit because I have faith in the system. But if the system craps out, it's going to crap out and there's nothing I can do about it. As painful as that is, it's the truth. The truth isn't what we want it to be. The truth isn't what we need it to be. The truth is whatever it is. And that's what I deliver here to the best of my ability. And if you can't accept that, then go listen to somebody lie to you about your religion and tell you a bunch of crap that you deep down know isn't true. That you don't have the strength to rise up to it. But don't burden me with your indoctrination. I already know what you believe. I know what the lies that you've accepted. And if that's all you can do, I'm not stopping you. I'm not discouraging anybody from doing that. I'm not going to your house and saying, "Oh my God, you got to do this thing," like I'm, proselytizing or whatever they call it, proselytizing. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I just say the truth here, and the truth is, your collective religion, starting with Judaism and Christianity and Islam, are about to destroy what is left of this crappy system, which is probably a blessing, which, on a spiritual level is definitely a blessing. But that's what's happening because your religions suck and they warp the truth about divinity and they disconnect you from the divinity within you. And the world that's been created, including our economic system and all these other depravities that you see, all stem from the failure and the corruption of these religions. All of them, but specifically the big three that have, influenced the majority of people. And it gives you a distorted view of what God is, and it disconnects you from your soul and your soul's path. And it's corrupted everybody and made us all weak and materialistic. And so there it is. That's the basis of this whole problem. It starts with your crappy religion. And, whether you are able to rise up to that or not, that's not my problem. But don't expect me to lie to you. You don't have to come here, right? I'm not here to, disparage or to get you to question your faith, but question your indoctrination, right? I support your faith, but it's your indoctrination that's the problem. I'm not here talking about your faith. I'm talking about your indoctrination. And so, I'm just going to put this up the way it is. I'll just slap a picture on it and because it's just an audio, whatever. Only spirituality can save this world. It's paramount. I'm definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.